Hello, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Nuri and I'm a freelance director slash cinematographer originally from London, United Kingdom, and now based in Detroit, Michigan. And today we are breaking down a commercial that I shot and put together, so it should be fun. Before we get started, please do subscribe to this channel. I'll be posting a new video every single Monday related to my filmmaking career, so please do subscribe. So this commercial was for a local charity here in Michigan who sponsor orphans in Lebanon, and they essentially wanted a video to kind of push the initiative that they have, which is orphan sponsorship. They wanted the video for two reasons: A, to kind of push forward an emotional incentive for those who might be thinking about sponsoring orphans and to push them over the finish line to do so, and B, to include on their website on the orphan sponsorship page. So the idea that I came up with for them was essentially a story of a young orphan writing a letter, while simultaneously we see a man going about his day, waking up in the morning, kissing his child, going to work, normal day. And by the end of the video we see that the orphan was actually writing the letter to him, thanking him for his sponsorship, because through his donation her life has seen an improvement. And the idea is to show that even though his day is going on as usual, because of his sponsorship of the orphan, he is still helping better another life. So ironically, the first shot of the video is actually my least favorite shot, and I'm going to explain why. Shooting in no light, and it's very difficult for me. I find it very difficult to kind of maneuver. What we wanted to do throughout the video was to use our lighting to essentially give a sense of the time of day. This scene takes place, as you can see, at 6:55 a.m. before he wakes up. So the first thing we did was we got a 300D and we shot it through the window of the bedroom over here. Now sadly the room was very small, very tight. The bed took up most of the space of the room, so it was kind of hard to put lighting all around it. But the first thing we did was, as I said, we got a 300D, positioned it outside and shone it through the window over here, and that essentially is lighting up the space over here. And the idea is to show that the sun is kind of rising and coming through the window, early daylight in the morning. Another thing I did was I set up my Falconized LED light over here on a stand, pointed it up at the ceiling, and that was bouncing back down from the ceiling again onto the same place. So we have two sources of light that are imitating daylight, and again the idea is essentially to give the impression that this is sunlight coming in through the window. Now the reason I'm not too happy with the shot is because even though you do kind of see this beautiful light spilling in over here, which I do like, and over here as well, giving that sense of early morning, I don't like the contrast on him here. It's not that I don't like contrast, I love contrast, but because the room was so small and I couldn't figure out a way to kind of give him a sort of edge light or add something else into it without making it too bright, I couldn't figure that out. I'm not too happy completely with the way this looks, and I'm also not happy that this is the first shot of the video. Of course, this is my own OCD. I'm sure anyone who watches it thinks this is fine, but I think it's very important on this channel to show my weaknesses just as it is to show my strengths. And shooting in low light, nighttime scenes, early day scenes, definitely my weakness. Now this shot over here of the orphan, played wonderfully by this young girl. I'll show you later on in a different scene of how I kind of decided to shoot this way, but essentially it's very simple lighting. I have a 300D on a softbox positioned over here, and the light is coming down over here on this side of her face, and I have my Falconized set up behind her, which is coming down this way, giving her a backlight. Those are essentially the two kind of main lights that you should have set up for any shot, a main source of light and a backlight. Whenever I shoot any scene, I see where the sun is coming from or where it's meant to be coming from, and I try to make sure that my lighting is set up to mimic that sunlight and to make sure that it seems motivated. So even though I've shown you where my lights are, the idea is that when you're watching it, you would assume that's not my lighting setup, but in fact sunlight that's lighting her face. And more often than not, when you shoot any face, you're looking for Rembrandt lighting, which is essentially a triangle on the cheek of the subject. That's a very bad triangle. There we go. Which is essentially where you want the most light, and you want everything else on this side of the face to be contrasted, which hopefully I have somewhat achieved. But what I do like about this image is it's not too contrasty as well. It's very subtle as well, because the scene is very bright and the idea behind her writing the letter is meant to be a very positive thing, a very hopeful thing. I wanted it to be as bright as possible. Now in shooting this video, I used my Blackmagic 6K and I also used FD vintage lenses, which I've gone on about before on this channel. I use my 50mm Canon FD here, and one thing I love about that lens is that when you bring the aperture down as much as possible, it gives this kind of these weird aberrations, which I love, almost like a dreamlike effect on the image when you're putting your focus. And for me, that's what I love. I love trying to get my image to be unlike reality as much as I can without it being too distracting. I think that's very important, because I really feel like that every image that we see on screen should be an interpretation of what we see in real life, and not just a mirror of it, a reflection, if you like, of what we see in real life. And therefore I like to take my artistic liberties and try to make sure the images look quite different. So again, the first thing I did was in this location, which is his bathroom, is essentially try to make sure that my lighting was as motivated as possible, thinking about where the sun would be at this time of day, and figuring out how I can use that to shape the image that I want. So the first thing I did was, obviously it's over here, but I'll show you in the reflection because the reflection is more apparent. I had my 300D placed behind the window outside, and it was shining in this way. And essentially what that's doing is having all this light coming in this way, leaving a lot of contrast on his face over here. And we actually had my Falcon Eyes sitting in the bathtub behind him, you can't see it, on a stand, and again pointing at the ceiling, and that bounced back down this way. So you have essentially a lot of backlight on the subject and a very slight bit of light over here because of the light that's coming in this way and bouncing back off the wall back into him this way. I think the key to any cinematic image is just really backlighting. That's what it is. It's, you know, having backlighting to be as prominent as possible, and essentially what that does is, you know, separates the subject from the background and also gives him a lot of contrast, which is also what you want to make a cinematic image. You want a lot of contrast between light and darkness, and I think that's very important to having any image quote unquote cinematic. Again, with this image, the first thing I did was try and figure out, you know, where the sun would be at this time of day, and I really overused almost my gobo in this video, but I love it, and I think it was perfect for this look. Essentially, you know, what you want to do with every image is just trying to make sure that you're layering it as much as possible with little details as best you can. So I have my 300D coming in, I believe, through the window at the front. You can't really see it, which is giving a sort of spill of light over here, which is nice. And then I have my Amaran 200X with the gobo on it, and I have these little filters that I have. One of them is a image of blind. Essentially what it does is that the light comes through, shines on that, you know, small little filter that I have, and projects an image of what seems like sunlight coming through blinds on a wall, and that's what I have right over here, essentially giving the impression that there's sunlight coming in through blinds over here and shining onto the wall, when in reality it's coming in through my Amaran this way at the wall over here. Now this, hands down, probably one of my favorite shots in the whole thing. We put my camera on a car mount which sits on the hood of the car. I feel like for driving shots, it's a wonderful thing to see, because you can see the driver, you know, you can see you feel like you're sitting on the hood of the car. Essentially you have that depth to an image that you want to see in a video, because, you know, as I said before on this channel, everything that we film, we are essentially producing a 2D image, and we need to, as best we can, give the impression of a 3D image, and we do that through layering the image as best we can. So obviously you have the camera here on the hood, you have the subject over here, behind him you have, you know, his back seats as well. You have the edge of the car here, and as he's driving, you know, you can see the world passing by behind him. So already it's a very pleasing image to the eye. That's exactly what we want to see when watching a video like this. And we can see here this beautiful image over here of the sunlight coming in behind the subject. Just beautiful, golden hour. Now whenever you're shooting outside, there's two things you essentially want to kind of try your best to do. One is always shoot at golden hour, which is 2 hours before sunset, obviously, and secondly, always shoot into the sun and have the sun backlight the subject. As I said earlier, backlighting is essential for a cinematic image, and having the most powerful light in our solar system backlighting the subject never fails to look good, you know. So you have, for example, here he is completely backlit, the car is backlit from the sun over here, which is, you know, beautiful. And because it's golden hour, you get these little, you know, quirks to your image right here. Beautiful, you know, just sun coming out, the sun bouncing off somewhere over here, coming in through the window and lighting him up over here, giving him that contrast that we want to see in the image, you know, over here. This is God's lighting, you know. We haven't set this up at all, you know, we haven't intended it. We've just kind of, you know, thrown the camera on the car, have him drive around during sunset, have the sun behind him, and God's sun does the rest. And interestingly enough, it's exactly how you want to make an image look cinematic, have that depth to it, contrast on one side, lighting on the other side, a lot of backlight, depth to the image as well, everything you want to have in the image right here in this image. This is also one of my favorite frames because of how clean and simple it is. You know, again, I have my softbox over here, I have the Falcon Eyes behind her, so she's being backlit over here. This light's coming in over here and kind of curving over her face, which is what you want. It's very soft lighting, you know, it's very clean lighting. You have the sun coming in through these curtains over here, which is also your lighting up the room. But most importantly, the lights that we set up are hidden from the viewer, which is what you want. You don't want the viewer to know where your lighting is set up. You want the viewer to assume that all the lighting is coming in through natural means. This is another frame that I'm super proud of. So again, the first thing we did was try and figure out where the lighting is actually coming from, you know, where they would be lit if there were no lighting that we'd set up. And you can see behind them very clearly the sun is coming in through there. It's very fierce. So the first thing I did was I set up my 300D on my softbox over here, and that is coming right down at him over here and lighting him up nicely over here. And again, we have my Falcon Eyes behind them coming down, giving them a lot of backlight. They're also being backlit by the sun itself, even though it's quite, I want to say, a bit overexposed over here. I do kind of like this look because the sun is very fierce at this time of day. Again, every frame that we're showing in this video is trying to show you what time of day it is, and we can see here very clearly it's obviously midday. Over here we changed the angle slightly, but the lighting is the same. But what's beautiful to see is you have that contrast coming in. That's what makes an image cinematic. That contrast that you have on people's faces. That's what you want to get. Beautiful Rembrandt lighting on this fella's face over here as well, which is what you want to achieve. Again, all achieved through motivated lighting, trying to figure out where the sun is and then setting up your lights accordingly to shape the image that you want without letting the viewer know where your lighting is coming from. So this is a much better look at the place that we rented out, this warehouse that we rented out for the young girl to sit in, where she can do these scenes. First thing I do is when I get to any location, I try to figure out two things. Number one, what is the best corner of the room, and number two, where is the actual daylight, natural light coming from. Like I said before, every image that we create is a 2D image of which we are trying to create the impression of a 3D image. So the first thing you want to do to achieve that is to provide depth to that image. Easiest way to do that is look for the corner of the room, because having a subject placed in front of the corner of the room will already give you the depth that you need. And this was perfect because we have the corner of the room right over here, and we have these large windows over here where the sunlight was actually coming from. So once I figured out where those two things were, thereafter I sat her down, framed her, and set up my lighting accordingly. As I mentioned earlier, I have my light here, my softbox, which is lighting her this way, and my falcon eyes behind her, which is backlighting her nicely over here. And the sun is really doing the rest. You have the sun coming through this small gap in the blinds over here, coming through over here, and giving these nice layers of light, spills of light all over the room, which is beautiful over here too. That's what you want to see. You want to see layers of light, spills of light. And you achieve this either by letting the sun do it for you and being very intentional about it, or doing it yourself with your own lighting, which is, very important. It's all about painting an image with light. I want to talk about this shot over here. This was obviously without any of my own lighting. Here we use just plain sunlight, but it's very important to get an understanding of where the sun is and how to best utilize it. Knowing that we were going to take this shot, I wanted to make sure that the sun was nice and low, even though it's not sunsetty, it's not warm, but the sun is lower, so it's less fierce. You don't want fierce lighting in your shot. Midday is the worst time to film outside because of how fierce the sun is, unless you're blocking that sun out or softening the light somehow. The sunlight, I believe, was coming kind of this way, which is exactly what you want. You want that kind of contrast on your image, so you can see, for example, the sunlight is much more fierce over here than it is over here, which gives you that kind of contrast as well. And also what's wonderful is that he's being somewhat backlit by the sun coming in through this way, which is also wonderful as well. Even though you can't see the sky and you can't see how fierce the sun is, you also can't see the fierceness of the actual sunlight, which is what you also want to avoid. You want to avoid that harsh lighting and try and make all your lighting as soft as possible, of course, depending on what you're filming and the intentionality behind the story that you're telling. Now we're going to end over here with two of my favorite shots. Now, of course, the light behind him is very fierce at this time of day. You can kind of see it's kind of a bit overexposed. Unfortunately, this area that he was in, this kind of, entrance to his house, was very small, so we're very limited to how we can light it. Usually when the sun is too strong, you want to try your best to kind of overpower that sunlight with your own lighting, but we can do that because of the space, so I would just kind of like let it go and learn to live with it. One thing I did do was I placed one of my small LED aperture lights over here where the actual light is, which is coming down over here and kind of giving a bit of warm light on his body. It's not overpowering the sun obviously, so it seems very minimal, but it's something. And the other thing I did was I got my gobo, I had another filter on it, and I shined my Amran this way, so you have this kind of ray of light coming in, which looks like it's sun coming in through some sort of window shade when it's not. And here you have contrast, maybe too much contrast, but it's still nice to see. That's what you want to see in any cinematic image. And what's beautiful about the sun being so fierce is that it's backlighting him beautifully and separating him from the background, which is also what you want. Here we were essentially trying to show the time of day was more toward golden hour, even though this was probably close to 3 p.m. So what we were trying to do was create the idea that it is around sunset with our own lighting. And you'll see that completely with this shot. So with this shot, we used our own lighting to simulate the idea of sunset. He's come home after work, the sun's setting, he's about to have dinner with his family. The first thing we did was I had my 300D outside the window here. It's shining in through the blinds over here and, lighting up the room nicely, but not too much, the right amount of light that you would expect around this time. This over here is actually not from my 300D shining through the blinds. It's actually my gobo. Again, I have it shining, I believe, over here somewhere this way behind him onto the wall over here. Even though that's all built myself through my own lighting, the idea is that when you see it, you assume that this lighting is, from the blinds. It's all motivated. We're trying to hide as best we can our actual lighting and try to get you to assume that this lighting is coming in through natural means. I also have my falcon eye set up over here, which is wonderful because it's not as wide as my softbox, smaller source of lighting, but still very soft, and that is lighting up his face and his body over here nicely. Beautiful, which is leaving a lot of contrast on his face over here. which is also wonderful. For this time of day that the scene is meant to be set in, it's meant to be set during sunset, so those little spills of light that are very warm, that we intentionally made to be very warm, give that impression that it's almost nighttime, the sun setting. At the same time, gives you that cinematic feel that you want, gives you contrast, and contrast usually equals cinematic. So that was that. Hope you enjoyed it. That was my breakdown of a commercial that I shot. Of course, not saying it's perfect, but I did approach this project with the intention that I would try my best to tell this story, not only using filming and framing, but also light. Trying my best to use light and shape light as best I can to tell the story and the emotion that I wanted to tell through the images. Hope you enjoyed that breakdown. You know, I'm not going to claim to be an expert. I'm here to learn as well. So if you have any feedback on my video and you're an established cinematographer, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. I would love to hear, how perhaps you would have shot it differently. And aside from that, we will see you next week for another video. Thank you so much. Take care.